Nice people in my neighborhood gave me this snowblower, and they gave it to me because it wouldn't work. And I think what that means is it just won't start. I think they also mentioned that it may be leaking gas. So anyhow, we're just going to do some basic checks on this thing and see if we can figure out what's wrong with it and fix it. I think overall this thing has fairly low hours on it. I mean, it has been used. I think it's had a couple of different previous owners, but the oil in it looks really good and clean, so that's a great sign. Overall, the unit looks pretty clean itself, not heavily worn compared to some that I've seen at least. And I think this thing's had a pretty decent life overall. So let's dig into it and see what's wrong. All right, so when you have a machine like this that you really don't know the history about, it's good to just validate what the problem actually is. So we don't believe it starts, but we should just make sure that that's really what's going on. It does have gas in it, seems relatively fresh. I'm gonna turn on the fuel and we're just gonna try and start it and see if it starts. Well, it doesn't seem like it wants to start. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take off the shield here. This goes around the carburetor. The whole reason why the shield is here is one, to guard the carburetor and linkages, but it also keeps some of the heat from the muffler inside this area, and that keeps the carburetor from freezing up. Before taking the shield off, the first thing we want to do is take out the key. Next, you also have to take off the choke knob. I just use a flathead screwdriver and gently pry it off of the rod. Now at that point we can actually undo the fasteners holding the shield on there. Let me show you how that's done. So there are two screws. These hold the shield to a bracket that's on the carburetor. Some additional machine screws we need to remove. One there. So now the shield is loose, so now we're going to kind of take it up, but also has to go off the choke rod. And then on the underside, there's a wire from the key switch that goes to this terminal here. We're just going to pull the wire off of the terminal. There we go. Now we've got the shield off and we have access to the carburetor. Okay, now that we have access to see the carburetor without that shield on there, we can make some observations. The carburetor's dirty, but it's normal dirty in my opinion. This hose here for the primer line has dry rotted and cracked. So what we're going to do is just cut off the bad section and we're going to push that hose back onto the inlet there. But first, before I do any of that, I'm going to shoot some starter fluid into the intake of the carburetor and try starting this thing. And the reason why I'm going to do that is that will let me know if the ignition system on this engine is working. So for instance, if I spray starter fluid in there and I turn the engine over and it tries to start, that tells me that there's not an issue with spark. And knowing that there's not an issue with spark, it would also make sense to continue down the path of troubleshooting this carburetor. So let's give that a try and just see what happens. Well, I think that answers that. So we know that this thing has spark, and it's safe to assume that we've got a carburetor problem. Barely touched this hose and actually just broke the rest of the way off. The condition of the hose isn't great, and it's actually dry rotted. That's why it did what it did. The best option would be to replace the hose. However, I cut back the part that was in bad shape. The rest of this seems pretty pliable. So I'm going to stick that back on there. There we go. Got that back on. There's a main jet at the bottom of the carburetor we're going to take out. We're going to clean that out really good. And then also there's an idle needle valve here. We're going to take that out and clean the passages for that as well. So I've moved this outside because when we take this fuel bowl off, it's pretty safe to assume we're going to have fuel coming out of here. And I'd rather that happen outside on my driveway than inside the garage and stink it up. We've got gas running out. It smells pretty stale. I'm going to turn off the gas from the gas tank. I forgot to do that. So now I have the fuel shut off from the gas tank, and we're just going to continue to take this off here. There we go. Here's the main jet, which we're going to clean out. But since we got that off of there, let's take this bowl off and have a peek inside. So now with the fuel bowl off, we can move the float. I can see that when I move the float, the needle valve on the back side goes up and down freely. So I'm not too concerned about that. So what we're going to do is take carburetor cleaner and spray through the jets on this. So we got the hole here, and then we're going to spray through there as well. And there's some other holes as well. Just make sure that you're going to spray through all the holes. You can even run some wire through them, like from a wire brush. Again, here's the main jet. I'm just going to take some wires from this wire brush and push it through some of the holes. Make sure they go through freely. They all feel pretty free and clear of obstruction. So I'm going to spray some carburetor cleaner. And that's just going to help to dissolve anything that possibly could be in there that we just didn't see. And then I'm just going to run a bristle through those holes one more time. Doesn't hurt anything. Now with those cleaned out, I'm going to put the fuel bowl back on here. Tighten it back up. If I didn't mention it earlier, this is a 1/2 inch wrench, by the way. We're good. All right, so I mentioned the next thing we're going to do is take this idle jet out of there. There is a cap that is over it. It's like a plastic cap, and I'm using the screwdriver to remove that plastic cap. That's going to give me access to unscrew this thing. There you go, there's the cap. Make sure you hang on to that. We'll put it back on when we're done. I didn't take this bracket off of the carburetor. This bracket's what helps to hold the shield on there. I'm going to take this bracket off really quick. That's just going to give me easier access to the idle jet. Okay, this should just be a 1/4 inch nut driver is what you need here. There we go, we've got that out of the way. Next we can unscrew the idle valve. Take that out of there. And what you'll see is there's some holes in here also. So I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to put our wire brush through those and spray carburetor cleaner through it. I'm also going to spray some into where I took that out of. That'll just help to dissolve anything that might be hanging around in there. So on this one, you have a hole on the end. Shove that through there real good, spin it around. You got a couple on the sides. Make sure they're clear. It goes through one side to the other. That's a good thing. And I find that the one on the end is typically the problem, so I'm just going to make sure I do that one really well. Alright, so now after doing that, I'm just going to spray this another time, and we're going to stick it back in the carburetor. Alright, now with this being done, we're just going to try starting it up and see if it starts. So I'm going to turn the gas back on. We're going to prime it. Set the choke. Let's try starting it. carburetor bowl is tight. I had a feeling that'd fix it. I'm gonna start this thing again just to see if the rest of everything on this thing works. If those two things helped yours out and got it running again, cleaning that main jet and cleaning the idle jet, great, you're done. So this thing's running pretty good. Right now it's kind of idle. We're gonna rev it up. Sounding good there too. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put on the shields and stuff, and we're gonna consider this done. Hopefully this worked for you too. It works for a high percentage of these that I worked on. So if you guys have success with this, let me know in the comments. So small engine repair is one of the things on this channel. So if you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to my channel.